welcome back to the channel. So I'm in the middle of doing my spark plug project on my Sienna, so I decided to make this separate video to refinish the wiper cowl on the Sienna. If you have a Sienna, after a couple years you'll notice that cowl ends up being very discolored and the plastic is very low quality. So in today's video I'll show you what I've did in the past and what I'm going to do today to refinish it to make it look nice again, so stay tuned. As far as the cowl goes, most of it is just clipped onto here. I've taken this thing apart once before to do some painting of this trim because this thing is very cheap and it fades really fast. So actually a couple years ago I Plastidiped it. Once I take this thing apart, I'm gonna refinish it, clean it up a little bit, and then respray it again just to give it a fresh coat of paint. The one thing that's going to get screwed up once you take this thing apart is this thing. You actually have to put new 3M tape in just to tape it back to the fender because that's the only way it sticks to here. Same with down here, it clips into that thing, but right along the edge here there's some 3M tape that you have to tape it back together with. Take apart the wipers, these little caps on the end, you just pop these things off and take apart the 14mm on both sides. Make sure you mark where your wiper is by putting a piece of tape or something onto the windshield so you know where to put it back, so it's all lined up once you do that. So when this van was about 2 or 3 years old, this thing started discoloring on me, even though the car is garage kept and it doesn't go out except when we're driving or parked at someone's house. But this thing started getting all discolored. There was like green and blue from the wiper fluid and everything that was just soaked into the plastic. So I actually refinished it back then with some Plastidip. But now this thing is probably going on about 7 or 8 years on this Plastidip, and this thing's just gotten really bad. Right now it still looks good. The Plastidip actually held up here in the Florida sun, but you can see a lot of discoloration here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this scuff pad right here, I'm going to re-scuff this whole thing, clean it off with some solvent or some cleaner just to make it sure it's all clean again, and just respray it with Plastidip. One of the things you need to do is just make sure you take apart this rubber right here. This thing's just clipped in with some molded clips in the thing itself, so you just take that apart carefully so you don't damage it, and then that way you could just paint over everything and make it look good again. This little rubber right here, this last time I did this, I actually masked it off so I wouldn't mess with it or spray it, but I think after 10 years of discoloration, I'm just gonna go ahead and just Plastidip that also, so this thing all has the same coat of paint on it and it'll last a little bit longer. So last time on the side pieces right here along the windshield, I also Plastidiped it, and you can see that stuff's kind of worn off and it's starting to come apart. I'll do the same with this thing also to get it all back together. One of the things you have to do every time you take this apart is there's 3M tape along the edge here, so you can make sure you have good quality 3M tape, the real stuff for trim, and cut a piece and put it on here just to replace that all again, because over time, even on your OEM one, that thing's going to come apart and just peel. That part basically just goes right here along the fender. You can see some of the residue that's still left here on this side. You want to make sure you clean that up with some alcohol and make sure this surface is nice and clean when you stick it back on also, along with the windshield side. In addition to refinishing the cowl, I'm gonna go ahead and redo these Denso wipers. These are the original OEM factory wipers on this van. You can see over time they're starting to fade and deteriorate. I usually just replace the rubber on here. They actually still sell the inserts for these. That's probably your best option. These things are only like $7 or $8 for the insert replacements. Every couple years I do that instead of replacing the whole wiper, but the wiper starts fading. So I'm gonna go ahead and refinish it. I'm gonna use this SEM trim black right here. It's a semi-gloss trim black that we use, so we'll go ahead and do that. Once I scuff this down and clean it up so that way it sticks really well. Once we do that, it'll look nice and OEM again. So I've got this thing all set up over here. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this all up with some super clean just to clean up all these little areas where it's all nasty. Try to get a lot of that dirt off before I start sanding it and scuffing it down, especially around here. I want to clean that all up, and then once I'm done scuffing it down, I'm gonna go ahead and clean it with some paint prep just to get it all cleaned up and get all the stuff off of it, and then we'll go ahead and spray it with the Plastidip. Got the surface all prepped up, so we're pretty much ready to go now. So to spray on Plastidip, just follow the instructions on it. It's pretty simple. Just spray some light coats on it just to coat it, and then just go a couple of different coats just to build up the layer so you don't get any drips, runs, so it all dries evenly. So I let this thing dry for about 2 hours. Everything looks pretty good now as far as the coating and everything. There was a few spots. This spot was a spot that lifted before. I tried to fix it with some acetone and get it smooth again, but you can still kind of see it. When we were prepping, a lot of this right here peeled off, and I peeled it and cleaned it with acetone, but then you can see the 2 layers of the new layer and the old layer right there. Overall, once it dries, you won't even notice most of that. The rest of this looks pretty good. Good even coating, enough to pretty much give it a little bit of semi-gloss and a rubber coating on it. But we'll go ahead and put all this thing back together, put the rubber back on, get the wipers and everything, and put it back on the car. Alright, when you put it back in, just snap it in. If it's still wet or you haven't let it dry enough, just be careful with it so you don't leave too many fingerprints. But it goes in pretty good and nice there. So what we're going to do is just put the hood down, and then we could do the side trim and then put the wipers all back on after that. For the 2 side pieces, I went ahead and used my 3M trim tape, cut it in half, and then used it on one of these because you got to kind of split it to get it in the little skinny strip here, but pretty much laid it out where the old one was. So we'll go ahead, once we stick it on there, it should hold pretty well for another 10 years. So this thing pretty much all snaps in. There's snaps on the bottom here on the sides. You just want to tuck it in and then peel that tape. Alright, we got this thing back in. This thing's always been a little bit of problem child right here on the corner. I usually end up having to put some more 3M tape there just to hold it down after a while. But everybody usually always has that same problem on this car. But as long as you tuck it in and snap it in and then get that 3M tape, it should hold. On the Sienna, if you guys ever put this thing back together and don't know where your wiper needs to be, there's actually 2 dots on the edge here, and then also 2 dots on the other end where the defroster is for the wiper, and that's basically, you have to put it in between those 2 dots. That's kind of the alignment mark if you ever need to know exactly where to place these things, because once you take the wipers off and put them back on, it's kind of trial and error to get it back to where it's supposed to be. Thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this quick video on refurbishing that wiper cowl. On the Sienna, that plastic doesn't last too long. After a couple years, it starts looking like crap. So doing this refurbishment really helps bring back the newness and the look of that cowl. For what I did, I used Plastidip, but you could use Plastidip or you could use that SEM trim paint to do the same thing. I think the Plastidip gives it a more rubbery and more natural look versus doing just the trim paint. And I think the Plastidip's a little bit more durable than the trim paint, and it lasts in the sun a lot longer. Anyways, if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel, turn on bell notifications, get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.